everyone. This is Connie King with the Black America Resource Directory, and we want to say thank you very much for attending today's presentation. We have Paula Parra, licensed clinical social worker and psychotherapist today, and we are going to be sharing some information that we hope will benefit all of us in terms of how do we effectively get our messages across and communicate in a way in which it's effective. Um, Although we looked at a couple of things and we talked about tips on how to have difficult conversations. And I'm just going to use myself personally. I was going in to ask my boss for a raise, and I had anxiety. I had all these emotions because I wasn't exactly 100% sure how to ask it in a certain way. So I know exactly when we're talking about certain things and we're trying to communicate our messages. Sometimes, we can kind of get in our own way in terms of trying to be able to share that information. So, Paula, I want to say thank you very much. The universe normally brings us who and what we need at the time we need it. And we thought that this was such an important conversation to have because we've done the art therapy, we've done music therapy, we've done drama therapy, we've done coping skills, and we also have done drama. So we believe that communication ties into all of the previous series that we have put on starting last year. So with that being said, Paula, I am going to let you take the floor, and then we'll ask a series of questions. We want this presentation to be interactive, in which if people have questions that they want to ask, then we can go ahead and answer those questions as well. So Paula, take it away.
Well, thank you, Connie. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm glad to be sharing this information with your audience. And so then in terms of preparing to have a difficult conversation, ask yourself, like, what is the goal? What am I trying to achieve in having this conversation? Am I willing to take a break? Be willing to take a break and to step back if things escalate and get heated, and announce, I need to take a 15-minute break to calm down. This is getting really heated. I'll be back in 15 minutes. And then while you're on that break, to take the time not to go over the negative details of the conversation, but just to distract yourself, either go on a short walk or read a book or magazine or, do a task that you need to complete. And then come back to the conversation when you're more calm and can think more clearly and be more peaceful in the way that you're conveying your message. The other thing is you want to ask the other person that you're going to have the conversation with, is this a good time for me to bring up this issue with you? Because they may not be ready to have that conversation. And if it's not the right time, talk about when it is a good time to have that more vulnerable conversation.
Well, let me ask you real quick, Paula. Yeah. That is so important because we have a tendency, because we're ready, we think that the other person is ready also. And sometimes what happens, that's kind of where the conflict comes in terms of communicating, especially if you're talking to a spouse or a partner or someone, that's close to you. They may just want to kind of come in and not deal with whatever it is, the issue or whatever it is that you want to talk about at that particular time. Maybe they do want to kind of take 10 or 15 minutes and just kind of get themselves situated, to the point where they can respond accordingly. And I know that in some cases when people aren't ready, there's a phrase that talks about the tongue is mightier than the sword, and then we talk about those things, or else we may talk about a Freudian slip. We talk about certain things that have impact or can impact us. So let me ask you a question. So, in how does addressing problems with communications help people overcome depression and anxiety? Kind of like in the example that I was showing with, trying to go to my boss and ask for a I was very, very anxious in that. So the communicating, how does that kind of maybe either lessen or reduce some of that anxiety?
Yeah, so on this, self-talk is very important. And with that, you want to think about, how am I talking to myself? What are the thoughts that are running through my mind? Am I having a more negative way of speaking to myself? And when you notice that, stop and ask yourself this question. The way that I'm speaking to myself right now, would I speak to a child that I love and care for in the same way? The hope is that the answer is no. And so then take that to reframe or reformulate what you're saying and be more peaceful and less, and take out the harshness in what you're saying. Because a lot of times when you're speaking harshly to yourself, the likelihood that you're going to speak harshly to other people is a lot higher. And so then when you are able to have more encouraging words for yourself, when you're able to positively affirm yourself, you'll be more likely to be able to lift yourself up from that depression. And you'll be more likely to be able to calm yourself when you're feeling anxious.
Well, one of the things that I know we had talked about as well is with the communication, how, especially when as African Americans, we don't really kind of have a language of our own. I know we talked about Ebonics, years ago, and that was kind of like the big thing in the African American community, because we did have certain code words, as I said earlier, like right on, or, what it be like, whatever those phrases were that we used, we knew as African Americans what each other meant by saying those words or those phrases, sharing those phrases. But in terms of overcoming certain communication styles, we talked about a communication style in terms of whether or not, if you, and you had mentioned it, during one of the presentations about the various steps that individuals can take in learning assertive communication skills in therapy. So in terms of it allowing us to release how we feel about the conversations we're having, can you speak to that a little bit in terms of how individuals feel if they are having those anxious conversations or those difficult conversations? What are some of those tips that can help us even kind of overcome? I know you talked about, counting like to 15 minutes, maybe kind of taking a deep breath before we speak, in terms of that. So can you expound upon that just a little bit more?
Yes. So in terms of the surface things that I talked about in terms of preparing for the conversation, on the emotional side, you may want to engage in some meditation. And you can incorporate a phrase like, all negative emotions are removed from my heart and replaced with peace, calmness, and joy. And just taking a moment to just be still and be quiet. You don't have to worry about if your mind is completely clear, but just bringing yourself back to being peaceful, calm, having a peace and having a calmness in your heart, okay, that will radiate throughout your body. And then the other thing is that you could even engage in deep breathing. Deep breathing really helps to naturally calm your system down. And when you're calm, that's when you're going to be able to communicate more effectively, because you can think more clearly, you can listen better, and you can formulate what you need to say much better when you're calm. And so when that's part of being able to prepare emotionally, is to have that calmness and that peace before you go into that difficult conversation, and to have the awareness that when things are beginning to escalate, that you can take a step back and give yourself time, or the other person time, to calm down, so that things don't get out of hand and feelings aren't getting more and more hurt.
What are the healing properties that are involved when someone improves their communication style?
So gaining the awareness of the 4 major communication styles is something that is really important in this area. And I'll go over those briefly. If you want more details, you can reach out to me and I can give you more on that. But assertive, aggressive, passive, and passive aggressive. And assertive, that's the recommended communication style. One way to remember these easily is by the animals. And assertive is the eagle, aggressive is the shark, passive is the turtle, and passive aggressive is the snake. And with that is this thing called I messages or I statements. And that helps you put together a way to say things that is clear, direct, it's honest, it's non-threatening. And so I'll just go over that with you. I'll go over the steps. Now keep in mind, these steps do not need to go in order. And you can take some of the things out if you need to. And so the first step is to state how you feel. The second step is to describe the person's behavior in a non-threatening way, the behavior that's causing you to feel in a particular negative way. The third step is to tell the effect of the behavior. Like, how is this behavior affecting you? And then the fourth thing is what you want to happen, what you need to happen, or what you would prefer. Okay. And so I can give you a few examples of what that could look like. Okay. So saying something like, when you criticize me in front of other people, I feel embarrassed and upset. I'd really like it if you would treat me with respect, whether we're in front of people or if we're on our own. Another way could be, I feel very worried when you stay out late without letting me know where you are. I would really like it if you would give me a call to let me know if you're going to be home past 10 o'clock. And then another one is something like, I feel frustrated when you interrupt me when I'm telling my story. I prefer if you let me say what I need to say without trying to change it. And so, as I said before, you can piece those steps together as you need to, and in your own way, in your own way of speaking. Okay, you don't have to copy exactly how I said it, but this definitely, putting together what you're going to say in this way helps you to convey your message in a more peaceful, non-threatening way, where the other person is going to be more likely to receive what you have to say, because of the fact that you're not attacking them, you're not attacking their character, and you're talking about behavior, because behavior is something that can be changed. Whereas the person's character, that's who they are to the core. That isn't something that's going to change overnight. So you want to focus on the behavior, not on the person.
One of the things that I just thought about when you were talking about the 4 steps, I know, or how helpful is it? Sometimes I know that I have to write my thoughts down, or I have to write down on a piece of paper what I want to say. Now, I use it as a guide or as an outline to help me transfer my thoughts onto paper so I can communicate it that way also when I'm reading it. Because as I indicated before, sometimes you send out emails and I have to, send the email to myself and make sure that the tone is right, even in an email. So would that also be an added or one of the tips that individuals can do is just maybe kind of write out your thoughts before you have to go and have that difficult conversation, because you may want to make a point and you may forget the point during the conversation. So this may just kind of be another a form of helping kind of keep as an outline.
Yes, for sure. And in the therapeutic world, that would be called future rehearsal. So you want to rehearse how you want an outcome to be based on the way that you are going to behave in that situation and what you're going to say in that situation. And then it's helpful to also think about, well, how am I going to respond if somebody, even though I've done this, I'm communicating assertively, but the other person still comes back at me in an attacking, insulting way? Think of the eagle. What does the eagle do? The eagle rises above. And so even though you're being assertive, you're being nice, and you're being peaceful, it doesn't always mean that the other person is going to approach you in that same way. So keep that in mind as well, because just because the other person does that, it doesn't mean that you have to go down to their level of where they are. Okay. Remember to be the eagle, spread your wings, rise above that situation. Think about before how you're going to respond.
Paula, I am just amazed and I'm enthralled. I do believe that the universe brings us who we need and what we need at the time that we need it. So it's no accident that we're here today and we're talking about things that are so important to individuals, and particularly in the African American community. And think about the language that other communities have. And unfortunately, as African Americans, we don't have our own language per se, but we still are able to communicate effectively with each other with our own style and with our own ways of either if it's right on or groovy or whatever the case may be, those words that kind of resonate throughout the community now. And it changed, different perspectives. But one of the things that I want to say in concluding, I believe that this session has been so informative and so instrumental in terms of how we can at least begin to say the things that we can say and say it differently to the point where there's no emotional or drawbacks to it. You've given us some great tips. So I'm saying to the audience today, please join us. Look at the listen and look at the video on YouTube and on Facebook and on our website at the Black America Resource Directory. Well, I believe that this session here ties in all of our other sessions, because everything that we do is a form of communicating how we want to improve or how we want our lives to be impacted by our relationships, whether or not if it's a boss and a colleague or a spouse, or even if our children, in terms of how we communicate with them. I know that I have a 30-year-old son, and I'm communicating with him differently than I did when he was 18 and he was still at home. So I had to change, the way that I addressed him in certain instances, because I'm trying to be respectful, that he's now a young man and, I'm still trying to convey certain messages. So Paula, I'm hoping with the presentation today that individuals would be able to take away how effective difficult conversations and communications can lessen those difficult conversations once you're prepared and you have the tips. And I know we talked about skills and therapy, and especially benefiting African Americans in terms of how we communicate with one another as well. So I want to say thank you, Paula. I really, really, really appreciate your coming on, sharing the information with our audience about something as simple as being respectful and being kind in terms of how we talk to one another, whether or not if that is communicating verbally or if it's communicating through our body language or our music or our drama or our art. It's all a form of communication. This has been so impactful. And I think that the one thing that I'm taking away, Paula, from your profession, you're saying my clients become skillful in creating emotional peace within and with others, allowing them to be their best selves and love the life they are living, which should be plastered on a billboard everywhere. So on behalf of the Black America Resource Directory.com, we want to say thank you for coming on today and sharing the information so we can share with others about alternative ways in terms of looking at therapy, where we're not facing that stigma of thinking that we're crazy. You know, we're trying to get the help for our community that we need. And
Yes.
we appreciate.
Thank you so much, Connie, for having me. It's been a pleasure being here with you today. I just wanted to, in closing, say the health of your relationships is extremely vital to your overall quality of life. And part of that is being able to communicate with the people that you love in a clear, honest, peaceful, loving way so that you can have healthy and long-lasting relationships. And if you need a therapist to help you do that, please reach out and get that help.
Thank you very much. And we look forward to beginning our next round of therapeutic alternatives. Everyone have a good day and thank you. Visit the Black America Resource Directory.com and we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.